What is the garbage of a nobody girl really worth? The flames in the office fireplace cracked and hissed, casting long dancing shadows across the room. As Victor tossed the rolled up blueprint straight into the fire, Maya lunged forward, her heart shattering in her chest. But the heavy arms of the site security guards violently held her back. She fought against their grip, tears blurring her vision as she watched months of sleepless nights turn into curling black ash. Those blueprints weren't just paper to her, they were her entire vision to restore the historic low-income housing district. They were the absolute only hope left for dozens of working-class families who were about to lose their homes to corporate greed. Victor adjusted his $1,000 silk tie, stepping right into her line of sight, intentionally blocking the dying embers. He looked down at her as if she were nothing but dirt on the bottom of his expensive Italian leather shoes. You actually thought you could build something, a little girl? You think anyone in the real estate world cares about a naive, broke architect trying to play savior? This is my site now. And those pathetic, historic shacks are getting bulldozed for my luxury shopping mall by tomorrow morning. Right there in the darkest and most humiliating moment of a young woman's life, true character is tested. When the world tries to burn down your dreams, you have to decide what your foundation is really made of. If you believe that a real home is built on love, compassion, and integrity, and not just cold, arrogant gold, I want you to stand with Maya right now. Hit that subscribe button to join a community that actually believes in doing the right thing. And please take a second to drop a comment below saying, I choose sincerity as my foundation. Your voice matters more than, and it sends a powerful message to the universe that the good guys still win. Now, let's get back to the story. Because Victor was so busy gloating and tearing Maya down, he had absolutely no idea who was watching him from the shadows. Over in the far corner of the dimly lit room, leaning quietly against the wet mop handle, was an old janitor. He was wearing oversized, grease-stained coveralls and a faded baseball cap pulled extremely low over his gray hair. His name was Richard. Victor didn't even register the old man as a human being. To the greedy contractor, the janitor was just a piece of dirty equipment, someone entirely invisible, meant only to clean up his messes, take his trash, and stay out of his way. But if Victor had bothered to look closely, just for 1 second, he would have seen that the old man's eyes weren't filled with fear or subservience. They were incredibly sharp, they were calculating, and they were as cold and unforgiving as solid ice. You see, Maya wasn't just some random employee. She was a brilliant young architect who had poured every ounce of her soul into this restoration project. She didn't take this miserable job for fame or a massive corporate paycheck. She took it because she knew exactly what it felt like to have nowhere to go, and she couldn't bear the thought of those families being thrown out onto the freezing streets. Maya worked harder than anyone else on the site, arriving before dawn and leaving long after dark. She spent her lunch break sitting on overturned paint buckets in the freezing dust of the construction zone, eating cheap peanut butter sandwiches. And every single day, without fail, she would break her sandwich in half and share it with the quiet old janitor, Richard. She didn't do it for praise. She didn't do it to look good in front of the boss because nobody was ever watching. She did it because she saw a tired old man working a grueling job, and her heart simply couldn't allow him to sit there alone and hungry. She used to sit next to him, smiling through her absolute exhaustion, and tell him all about her grand dreams of building safe havens for people who had lost their way. Richard would just nod slowly, chewing his food in absolute silence, watching her with a deep, unreadable warmth in his eyes. Maya treated him with the genuine respect and love you would give a father. She had absolutely no idea that this quiet, unassuming man sweeping the concrete dust was secretly the billionaire chairman of Richard Holdings. Yes, the legendary real estate tycoon who actually owned the entire block of land they were standing on. Richard had deliberately gone undercover in his own company's development site as a janitor. He wanted to personally test the character of the new contractor he had just hired for this massive project. He wanted to see exactly how Victor treated people who could do absolutely nothing for him. And Victor was failing the test in the most spectacular, disgusting way possible. Fast forward to later that evening when the construction site was completely empty and the heavy storm clouds had rolled in. Maya had been physically thrown out into the freezing rain with nothing but a small cardboard box containing her pens and a family photo. Victor had fired her on the spot, laughing as she walked out the iron gates. But Victor wasn't just a cruel bully with an ego problem. He was a calculating thief. Before he had staged that little theatrical display of burning her original sketches, Victor had secretly photocopied the core structural designs of her project. He planned to take those brilliant, flawless designs and present them to the board of directors at Richard Holdings the very next morning. He was going to claim her genius work as his own to secure a massive $500 million development contract. He truly thought he had won the game. He thought he had completely destroyed Maya's life and erased her existence without leaving a single trace of evidence behind. But as the office fell dead silent and the embers in the fireplace began to fade into a dull orange glow, the old janitor stepped out from the shadows. Richard walked slowly and purposefully over to the hearth. He didn't grab his broom or his dustpan. Instead, he reached his bare, callous hand directly into the hot, smoldering ash. He didn't even flinch at the heat burning his skin as he pulled out a small, half-charged scrap of thick drafting paper. It was the bottom right corner of Maya's original blueprint, and right there, barely untouched by the greedy fire, was a tiny, intricate architectural watermark. It was Maya's personal hidden signature, embedded right into the ink. Richard brushed the gray ash off the paper, his jaw clenching so tight that a muscle ticked furiously in his cheek. He reached deep into the pocket of his dirty, paint-splattered coveralls and pulled out something that absolutely did not belong on a dusty construction site. A sleek, custom-made, heavily encrypted satellite smartphone. He dialed a private number that went straight to the top floor of the city's most expensive skyscraper. The voice on the other end answered on the very first ring, sounding frantic and out of breath. "Mr. Chairman, we haven't heard from you in weeks. Is everything all right?" Richard's voice was no longer the weak, raspy mumble he used when he was pushing a broom around the oblivious crew. It was the booming, authoritative thunder of a man who controlled entire financial empires. "Cancel all my scheduled meetings for tomorrow morning, and I want you to assemble the entire executive legal team along with site security in the main glass boardroom at exactly 9 o'clock. Victor is coming in to pitch his new project, and I am going to end him." The very next morning, the sun was shining brightly on the top floor of the Richard Holdings Tower, inside the massive, glass-walled boardroom. Victor was standing at the head of a 20-foot mahogany table. He was wearing a brand new, custom-tailored Italian suit, grinning from ear to ear. He had just finished presenting Maya's stolen blueprints to the executive board, parading them around as his own brilliant, groundbreaking vision. The board members were nodding, visibly impressed by the architectural genius they were looking at. Victor was literally seconds away from securing the most lucrative, life-changing contract of his entire career. He kept checking his gold Rolex, waiting for the legendary chairman to arrive and sign the final paperwork. "Don't worry, everyone," Victor said smoothly, leaning on the table with arrogant confidence. "I promise you, once I bulldoze those ugly historic slums, this new commercial center will double our profit margins in a single year." Suddenly, The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open with a loud thud. 4 massive security guards stepped into the room, fanning out on either side of the entrance. The entire room went dead silent. And then the chairman walked in. Victor's smug, arrogant smile completely froze on his face. His jaw practically dropped to the floor, and all the blood instantly drained from his cheeks. He blinked once, twice, desperately hoping his eyes were playing some kind of sick, twisted trick on him, but it wasn't a trick. The man standing before him in a flawless charcoal gray Tom Ford suit, radiating absolute power and authority, was the exact same man he had treated like garbage. Just yesterday, it was the old janitor. Richard walked slowly to the head of the table, his piercing eyes locked dead onto Victor's trembling face. "You," Victor choked out, his voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. What? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I think you know exactly why I'm here." "Victor," Richard said, his voice cold and dangerously calm. Richard reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a small, clear plastic evidence bag. Inside the bag was the half-burnt, ash-covered corner of drafting paper he had pulled from the fire. He tossed it casually onto the center of the mahogany table, right on top of Victor's shiny new presentation folders. "That is a heavily encrypted, trademarked watermark," Richard announced to the room, tapping the burnt paper. "It belongs to a brilliant young architect named Maya, the same woman you fired last night, right before you stole her life's work to pass off as your own." Victor started sweating profusely, taking a frantic step backward, as the board members immediately began whispering in shock. No, sir. There's a misunderstanding," Victor stammered, raising his hands defensively. "She was a nobody, a low-level drafter. She didn't know what she was doing." Richard slammed his hands down on the table, the sheer force of it making Victor physically jump. "She is a visionary," Richard roared. "And more importantly, she has 10 times the integrity, character, and sheer human decency in her little finger than you will ever have in your entire miserable life. You thought you were dealing with a nobody. You thought you could step on the people at the bottom because you assumed the people at the top weren't watching. Well, I was watching." Richard turned to his head of legal, who was already standing by with a stack of red stamped documents. "Tear up his contract," Richard ordered coldly. "You are permanently blacklisted from every major development project in this city, Victor. And my legal team will be filing a massive civil suit against you for intellectual property theft before you even make it to the elevator. Security, get this trash out of my building." Victor didn't even have time to beg. The guards grabbed him by the arms and practically dragged him out of the boardroom, his humiliating downfall complete in less than 5 minutes. As the doors closed behind the disgraced contractor, Richard took a deep breath, adjusting his cuffs. He pressed a button on the intercom. "Send her in, please." The doors opened one more time, and Maya walked into the room, looking incredibly nervous and confused. She had received a mysterious phone call that morning, telling her to come to the headquarters immediately. When she looked up and saw Richard standing at the head of the table, her eyes widened in absolute shock. "Richard?" she whispered, looking at his expensive suit and the respectful executives surrounding him. You're the chairman?" Richard's cold, intense expression instantly melted into a warm, deeply affectionate smile. He walked over to her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I told you I was keeping an eye on things, didn't I?" he said softly. "Maya, I've spent my entire life building an empire, looking for people who actually care about the foundation they leave behind. Yesterday, when you thought you had lost everything, you still treated a dirty old man with nothing but kindness. You never feared failure, and you never lost your positive spirit. That is the kind of mindset that builds true, lasting wealth." Richard picked up her stolen master blueprints and handed them directly to her. You are officially the new chief architect of this company, and your historic housing project is getting full funding starting today. Maya covered her mouth with her hands, tears of absolute joy and unbelievable relief streaming down her face. She realized in that moment that all her hard work, her persistence, and her unwavering good heart had finally paid off in the most magical way possible. If you're watching this right now and you're happy to see Maya finally get the victory she deserves, I want you to celebrate with her. Take a moment right now to leave a comment saying, "I choose sincerity as my foundation." Let's flood the comments with that beautiful statement to bless her new journey. Later that evening, Maya and Richard stood together on the top floor balcony looking out over the city skyline. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the exact district that Maya was now going to save. It was a powerful reminder to all of us. Fire might be able to burn paper, and ruthless people might try to steal your credit, but nobody can ever burn down your talent, your positive energy, and your sheer will to succeed. True wealth isn't just about money. It's about the kind of person you choose to be when things get hard. If you have the courage to keep learning, to stay joyful, and to never let setbacks destroy your spirit, you will eventually reach the financial freedom and the beautiful life you are aiming for. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more daily inspiration. And remember our promise. Always build your life on the right things. I choose sincerity as my foundation.